Hi, my name is Matthew Bellisario. Welcome to another edition of the Bellisario Sonic YouTube channel here, episode. Today, I'm going to discuss Bill Evans, one of my absolute favorite jazz artists. And I think that I've been wanting to do an episode on him specifically for quite some time. Bill Evans is probably one of the most popular collected jazz pianists of all time. All of his reissues, all the unreleased concerts that have been coming out have been great sellers. All the record store day releases have been sold out. They're hard to get. They get very expensive, and for good reason, because they're all very good records. The performances are very good. For those of you who are new to Bill Evans was born in August 16th, 1929, and he died in September 15th, 1980. I'm not going to get into a lot of his personal life. We all know that he died early. He had problems with hepatitis even when he was young. But then, of course, the drug use and so forth throughout the years took a heavy toll on his body, and he unfortunately died way too soon. But what this guy packed in to his short lifespan is more than what most people will do in a lifespan of 70 or 80 years. So I want to talk a little bit about that. He went to school, was classically trained at Southeastern Louisiana University. He went to New York and studied jazz there. He got drafted into the Army for between 51 and 54. And ironically, he played flute and piccolo and piano when he was in the Army at Fort Sheridan. So this guy was a pretty talented guy. He didn't really see himself as that. He looked at himself as being quite deficient in natural talent, and thought that it took a lot of work in order to develop as a true jazz artist. And he went back and forth on to whether he wanted to become a classical artist or a jazz artist. After he got out of the Army, he took a year off, complete year off, went home with his parents and said, I have to develop my technique. He worked a solid year playing on his grand piano at home for a complete year. Never didn't play out once. So he believed in developing a technique, but further and foremost, he really believed in the ability to be able to take what was in your mind and transfer it to the instrument you were playing, whether it be piano or anything else. And that's not something that's easily done. I've been playing music most of my life and play guitar and a little bit of piano and do a little singing, but I by no means consider myself to be a great artist. And to really think about what Bill Evans did in the release of his live music and his recorded music, which I'm going to talk about here briefly, it's pretty incredible what he was able to do and how he's able to continue to develop and grow throughout this entire period. Steve Allen said, and I'm going to quote this and read this because I want to make sure I quote this correctly. He really gave a profound insight into Bill Evans as a jazz artist. He said this in 1966. He said, in my capacity as a pianist and composer too, I'm enormously impressed by the scope of his achievement. He's much more, you see, than another good jazz pianist, although he is certainly that. But in addition, he is a force, an influence. There are certain pianists, I guess Errol Gardner would be a fine example to make my point, who are an art form unto themselves. He's an influence, an educator, and also very much a philosopher. What sticks with me in that quote is an art form unto themselves. And that's a powerful statement because you can only say that about so many artists in any genre of music. What else did other people have to say about Bill Evans? They called him the ultimate poet of piano. He makes the piano sound like a new instrument. Every chord, every note means something. Bill Evans' music touches my soul in a way that no other musician can. If I ever tired of Bill, it would only be because I either went deaf or passed away. And finally, what are you doing the rest of your life? Listening to Bill Evans. What else? So that says a lot. A couple of quotes I wanted to give you from Bill Evans himself. They might give you an idea as to what kind of a person he was, briefly. I believe in things that are developed through hard work. I always like people who have developed long and hard, especially through introspection, and a lot of dedication. That's one thing you can say about Bill Evans and his music. He was a dedicated man. Then he said, it bugs me when people try to analyze jazz as an intellectual theorem. It's not, it's a feeling. And that just kind of brings out a point that I'd like to make about jazz music as a genre. You know, we like to classify things in certain genres because that's what we do as human beings. We like to classify things so that we can refer to something and have someone else understand it relatively quickly. So when I say, hey, this is a dog, everybody knows it's a four-legged creature with the ears that look a certain way and a snout and so forth. If I say it's a cat, someone can immediately tell it's a cat by looking at it. And then there might be different subgenres, different types of cats, different types of dogs. It's the same way with music. So there are different types of jazz music. But I would also say that there's a point where some things step outside of that genre and they become something else. But with Bill Evans, he's almost a subgenre of jazz unto himself, as Steve Allen says, an art all unto himself. And so I wanted to make that point. Now, what are Bill Evans' accomplishments? If we were just to put them out on paper, he recorded more than 50 albums. And this is, of course, of 1956, when he made his first recording as a leader, up till when he died in 1980. So you're talking about 25-year span of time. In that period, he did 50 of his own records as a leader. Played on 60, at least 60 as a sideman. And then while a lot of people consider Bill Evans a master of recreating a standard because he did it his own way, he also wrote 60 of his own compositions, which is pretty impressive as a jazz artist, because a lot of jazz artists spent their entire time just playing standards or recreating standards or doing it their own way. And very rarely, or not quite as often, write their own compositions. Well, Bill Evans, in the course of 24 years, wrote 60 of his own complex jazz compositions. Now, Bill Evans also worked with artists such as George Russell, who is pretty much the creator of modal jazz in a sense. Him along with Miles Davis, and he did 4 albums with Bill Russell. Now, as I go through this, I want to show you some of my records that I collect also. So these are two of the Bill Evans with George Russell records that I have. And this one here is called New York, New York, which is a 1959 recording. This would come right after Kinda Blue. And this one is called Jazz in the Space Age, which was just a year later in 1960. And these are just absolutely fantastic, wonderful listens. So I wanted to show you those. So as I kind of go through these, I'm going to show you some of the records also that I have on Bill Evans. He also played with Tony Scott. He did, I think, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 records with Tony Scott in the mid to late 50s. Of course, with Miles Davis, everybody knows the Kinda Blue. Played on the 1958 Miles, Jazz at the Plaza, and of course, Alive at Newport. He was on that. Michel Legrand, he played on Legrand Jazz, great popular jazz record. Played on 4 records with Cannonball Adderley. Portrait of Cannonball, or 3 of them, Portrait of Cannonball, Jump for Joy, and Know What I Mean. Those are the 3 records he played with Cannonball. He also did 2 collaborations with Tony Bennett. That's just to name a few of the people that he's collaborated with. Also, though, in his own record recordings, you have this famous trios, and that maybe is what he's best known for, other than Kinda Blue, would be his wonderful trios. So, of course, probably the most famous one would come from these sessions here, the Complete Village Vanguard sessions, or that were recorded in 1961, and this would be your famous Evans, LaFaro, Mojian trio. So you got Bill Evans on piano, Scott LaFaro on bass, who unfortunately died not long after this was recorded, and then the great Paul Motian on drums. So this was the first conglomeration of Evans's powerful jazz trios. One thing cool about Bill Evans was he let his sidemen who played with him, especially in these trios, have almost free reign to play what they wanted to play. He was not a dictator like some of the other jazz musicians that had their own trios or quartets or quintets. He was very liberal in what he allowed his bandmates to do. His other trio conglomerations, and I'm going to just go through some of those. He had the Chuck Israels, Paul Motian trios. So you're going to get this one here. This particular album is Bill Evans Trio. This was with Scott LaFaro and Paul Motian, which is before this was recorded in '59. So it's right before they did those Complete Village Vanguard recordings in '61. How My Heart Sings, Bill Evans Trio here. Here you're going to have Chuck Israels come in as bass. This is another powerful trio. Chuck Israels and Paul Motian trio. Later on, you're going to have Paul Motian with Gary Peacock on this particular record. You've got the trio with the 65 trio here. And here you're going to have Bill Evans, Chuck Israels, and Larry Bunker, which would be another popular form of the Evans trio. Philly Joe Jones played with them as well as drummer. Bill Evans, Eddie Gomez, of course, very popular bass player that played with him, and along with Elliot Zygmunt on drums. This is one of those albums of that formation. And the same here on this newly discovered concert recording that would have Evans, Gomez, and Zygmunt on drums, which was recorded in 1976. So that gives you kind of an idea. Another formation would have been the Eddie Gomez, Marty Morell trio, which played for quite a while. So he had a lot of popular trios and very powerful, and they were all uniquely expressive in how they played jazz. And Bill Evans was great at spotting talent and great at interacting and figuring out which ways he had to actually change his playing in order to get the most out of the people that he was playing with. That also makes him very unique. He had a couple of quintets as well, with Harold Land on tenor, the great Kenny Burrell on guitar, Ray Brown on bass, Philly Joe Jones on drums, another great quintet with Lee Konitz on alto sax, Wayne Marsh on tenor sax, Eddie Gomez on bass, and Elliot Zygmunt there on drums. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the vast output of Bill Evans and the people that he played with. And I'm just going to run through a couple of these just to show you. This is a 1966 recording here with the Bill Evans Trio that I picked up. A couple of cool, I think I showed you this, guys, on another, this Bill Evans Treasures, which was recorded in Denmark. And you've got the trio here, solo and orchestral work. Wonderful record. I showed you this one last time, the Bill Evans Some Other Time, 45 RPM, fantastic sounding record. A couple of last year's Record Store Days, I did pick these up, and these are fantastic. These were recorded in South America, Buenos Aires. So you've got a 1973 Buenos Aires and a 1979. These are both fantastic records. And this is, of course, Bill Evans 73, and you listen to the 79, and you've got quite a bit of difference, but yet spectacular performances, engaging, intense. And of course, you're talking here less than a year from when he died. And so these are very, very good records. Another great outing is live at Ronnie Scott's here, and you've got Eddie Gomez and the great Jack DeJohnette, of course, another great drummer that played with him briefly, I think for about 6 months or so. And this 2-record set is a fantastic set. You've got Bill Evans playing almost more of a formal combination between almost a jazz and classical composition. And so this is a pretty unique record called Symbiosis. 2 movements that were written for him that he recorded on this. And so this is a completely different type of record, but it just shows you how versatile and creative Bill Evans really was. Conversations with Myself, wonderful record. And this is really an interesting thing because Bill Evans multi-tracks with himself. So he put down one piano track, another one, and another one. He's got 3 piano tracks, and he plays off of himself on these 3 tracks of piano. And it's really a brilliant record, and you've got a lot of great tunes like Round Midnight on here, Blue Monk, Stella by Starlight, and they're in a way you've never heard these ever played before, and probably will never hear again. Bill Evans, Autumn Leaves in Concert. This is another live recording with Eddie Gomez and Marty Morell on drums. Another trio outing there. Bill Evans, Top of the Gate, another record store release here from 1968 in New York City. So another great trio here. You got the Evans, Gomez, Morell lineup. And again, these are all so good. And finally, I've got I Will Say Goodbye, Bill Evans trio here, which would be Zigman, Gomez, and Evans here on this record. So those are most of the vinyl records that I've got with Bill Evans on there, with the exception of a few other records. I also do collect CDs, and I got these 2 recently Japan releases here of some of the final recordings of him live, and these are the Paris concerts 1 and 2. And these sound really good. I got them on CD not too long ago, simply because I just haven't been able to find them at a reasonable price at this point on vinyl. So hopefully that'll happen at some point. And then some of the other record store day stuff that came out that I wasn't able to pick up, that I picked up on CD, which sound really good. Bill Evans, Another Time. This is with Eddie Gomez, Jack DeJohnette, their live recording from Hilversum concert. Behind the Dikes here with Morell and Gomez here, Netherlands. These are nice. If you're not able to get the records, which are now, these are going for well over $100 a piece on vinyl, at least some 150, 200. These CD sets are really nice. And then finally, Evans in England. This is another great recording with Gomez and Morell on drums with him. So those are just some of the ones. And finally, last but not least, if you're looking for something to get into Evans and you're just getting into him, this set here, everybody still digs Bill Evans, is a 5 CD set that kind of spans most of his career. So if you're looking for some way to actually get into Bill Evans without having to spend a ton of money, you can get this for like around $50. And this CD set, is a craft outing, and it really has a nice booklet inside and a lot of interesting information on Evans. So that's about all I have to say. If there's one particular artist, he would be one of the ones. Let's just say I had to pick one artist to take their entire catalog, and that's all I can pick from. Evans would surely be one of the ones I would consider taking, just his catalog, because you can listen to all his different albums and you never get tired of it. It's always engaging and always different and always creative. And so I think that Steve Allen's quote, how some artists are an art form unto themselves, certainly applies to Bill Evans. All right, well, take care. We're coming up on another Jazz Nerds episode coming up soon, so stay tuned.